Pope Francis calls for ban on despicable surrogacy births. Pope touched on several subjects. An annual address on threats to life and peace. Pope Francis called Monday for a universal ban on the despicable practice of surrogate motherhood, as he included the commercialization of pregnancy in an annual speech listing threats to global peace and human dignity. In a foreign policy address to ambassadors accredited to the Holy See, Francis lamented that 2024 had dawned at a time in history in which peace is increasingly threatened, weakened, and in some part lost. Citing Russia's war in Ukraine, Israel-Hamas war, migration, climate crisis, and the immoral production of nuclear and conventional weapons, Francis delivered the lengthy laundry list of the ills afflicting humanity and the increasing violation of the international humanitarian law that allows them. Francis also listed smaller scale issues that he said were threats to peace and human dignity, including surrogacy. Francis said the life of the unborn child should be protected and not suppressed or turned into an object of trafficking. I consider despicable practice of so-called surrogate motherhood, which represents a grave violation of dignity of the woman and the child based on the exploitation of situations the mother's material needs instead. Saying a child is a gift, never the basis of commercial contract. He called for a global ban on surrogacy to prohibit the practice universally. Francis has previously noted the Catholic Church's opposition to what he called uterus for rent, and some European countries prohibited it. At the same time, the Vatican's Doctrine Office has made clear that homosexual parents who resort to surrogacy can have their children baptized. So there is some conflict on this. While commercial surrogacy contracts are common in North America, including protections for mothers with guarantees of independent legal representation and medical coverage, they are banned in parts of Europe, including Spain and Italy. In Canada, it is illegal to pay, offer to pay, or advertise to pay a person to be a surrogate. Surrogacy is not banned as long as the surrogate does so for altruistic reasons. We know it's being abused. Russia's war in Ukraine and the threat to babies born in surrogate Ukraine mothers exposed the country's thriving industry. Ukraine is one of the few countries that allows surrogacy for foreigners. Critics say surrogacy targets women who are poor and from vulnerable communities. War's top mind for Pontiff. In his geopolitical roundup, Francis singled out Russia by name in noting that large-scale war waged by the Russian Federation against Ukraine has ground on. It marked an unusual break with Francis's usual tendency to spare Moscow direct public blame for the invasion, expressing solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Francis was more balanced in his lament of Israel's ongoing war in Gaza, condemning Hamas's October 7th assault on southern Israel and every instance of terrorism and extremism. At the same time, he said the attack provoked a strong Israeli military response that left thousands dead and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He called for an immediate ceasefire, including Lebanon, the liberation of hostages held in Gaza, and reiterated the Holy See's position, seeking a two-state solution for Israel and the Palestinians and internationally guaranteed special status for Jerusalem. In other comments, the Pope lamented a crisis in Africa without naming names, blasted military coups, and elections in several African countries marked by corruption, intimidation, and violence. Called for a respectful diplomatic dialogue with the Nicaraguan government to resolve what he called protracted crisis. The government's crackdown on the Catholic Church has resulted in the detention of priests and bishops. The government has accused the church of aiding popular protests against his administration that he considers an attempted coup. He called for the resumption as early as possible of Iranian nuclear talks to ensure a safer future for us all.